Hello everybody, this is Fernando for the latest aliens and UFOs video. Alright, let's go ahead and let's do another encounters video here. This one again coming from the reddit.com website. They're from the subreddit called The Truth Is Here. This one is a pretty long story involving a strange encounter with a U-shaped structure that occurred to this user. When I was reading this information, they absolutely painted a clear picture of what was happening at the time, and they also included a drawing, which I'll showcase towards the end. In this case, it's a drawing, a self-made one that the user made based on the description of the structure itself. Very fascinating stuff, always eerie to hear about these type of encounters, especially again when it happens out there in the middle of nowhere. So it comes from the user that actually had their user information deleted, so it's hard to tell who this ID was from, but they titled it as U structure, in other words the letter U structure. So again, let's go ahead and let's share all that information here, and then I'll give my comments on it afterward. Here's what they have to state. So this was years and years ago. I would have at the time been about 16 years old. So maybe this was about 10 years ago, and some of the details can be a little confusing. When I was younger, my father and I went hunting to different ranches with friends of his and also their respective sons. We had quite interesting moments on these trips, but we never experienced anything like this. On one occasion, I don't remember very well why, but my father and I arrived hours before any other people were there at the new place, and so we rented it for about a couple of 4 days, maybe around that time. And so I remember there in that ranch, it was surrounded by hundreds and hundreds of kilometers of semi-desert landscape. There was this rather large white house that was also surrounded by a land-like clearing. And so the most interesting thing was a small maze of metal fences where there were cows. Now in these places, there was no phone signal, much less internet, so I did not have a cell phone there. And if I wanted to take any pictures of this semi-desert landscape, I asked my father for the phone. And so sometime after we got by that house and while we were arranging our things, we began to hear the cows in that corral become very uncomfortable, making their usual moo sound, but it was as if they were wanting to get out of their fences. They were quite uncomfortable. This puzzled us a lot since we did not know what was happening to them. They moved strangely, almost desperately, making a lot of noise, and so when we got a little closer to inspect them, we commented something along the lines to ourselves as, "What the hell is happening here?" And so the cows left, getting more and more uncomfortable, to such a degree that I came to think that they would leave the corral, but my father assured me that everything is going to be fine, even though they were acting a little crazy at the moment. So maybe after about 3 minutes of this, unexpectedly, the ground started shaking like it was an earthquake. Now, it wasn't strong enough to shake the house or our truck or the cows or anything else between us, but things were still shaking. In fact, I remember that my father, although I was no longer a little child, I approached him and half hugged him so that way he could calm me down because I was too restless and I was also very confused about what was going on. This seemed very strange to me since, at least according to what I've heard, this part of the country was almost impossible for something like this to happen. This strange earthquake would not why it be so strong, and it lasted at least almost a minute. That these time periods, these seconds seemed eternal. And so when it finally finished, both the cows and us, we were alarmed and how long this took. We calmed ourselves down and we never forgot what happened. And then anyone else that we told this to about what happened as well, we did so in a very serious manner, but they still didn't really seem to believe us. Well, after that, we used the place for the hunts. We killed some animals, some deer, some wild boar, and so on. And then when that happened, we managed to get out of there. But in other trips, we also didn't hunt in that location at all. Now, nothing strange happened in the next couple of days. It wasn't until the morning of the very last day we were there, the day we were supposed to leave, that it happened. So we always got up around 5 of the morning to get ready to go hunting. And we saw the sunrise come out. By the way, at that time of night in that location without pollution, we could easily see thousands and thousands of stars in the sky at night. And it was a very, very great sight. But as we were fixing the trucks to go hunting, and later on we would go into the city, the sun was just rising very slightly. It was a little bit cold. We were still half asleep. Everything was relatively quiet when suddenly again, the cows, they began to shake. They began to move very desperately. And then my father and I immediately recognized this as the event that occurred before, and that it was probably happening all over again. In fact, we told ourselves this is exactly what happened before. It was almost like that earthquake from the very first day. And so we were all alarmed. We didn't know what to do. I didn't know my father had this strange feeling, the one that I was having, and everything again was trembling. And so I was right. Soon afterward, the earth, at least in that area, began to shake. It made us a little bit drowsy. And so we were very alarmed. I remember I was thinking, blank, I hate this blank. And then suddenly, to everyone's surprise, all the electricity surrounding the location abruptly disappeared, and almost as if we were suddenly hit with darkness. Everything turned off, in other words, all the electricity, the vehicles, everything. It happened very abruptly, suddenly leaving us in total darkness and even more alarm. And I remember a few shouts and curses, and everyone was getting quite desperate at that time. Once that happened, we immediately saw we were being approached by a very strange kind of structure. This was something in the shape of a gigantic U. It was gray silver. It had that type of color. It had two reflectors, yellowish lights on the front part of it, and then it also had these two lines / stripes of lights on the lower part. And then where the U was curved, there was also a rounded lower part too. This structure must have been maybe about a couple 100 meters flying above the ground, and it was not making any noise whatsoever. It was completely silent. As it moved towards us, we were left in a state of just utter amazement and bewilderment. We had never seen anything like this before. It was majestic, but it was terrifying at the same time. We did not know where it was coming from. It was almost as if it just appeared from the horizon. It had been tiny at the beginning, but then as it approached, its size became more and more evident. It, and I don't know what else to call it otherwise than it, I don't remember, but it took a very short time for it to fly right over us. And we didn't even have time to prepare for its arrival. Even if we did, I don't think we could escape this thing as it was reaching us. And so this thing, it decided to illuminate us with its lower lights. This time we saw that there was a huge artifact on top of us. In fact, it was long, very long, almost eternally long, and it was difficult to explain its length. I felt almost absolutely helpless. I was paralyzed by the terrifying, majestic beauty of this thing, of being so close to it, this huge structure of unknown origin. Its lights dazzled us, but even then, there was some difficulty that we could see surrounding it. It was like something straight out of a movie, but it was extremely, absolutely real. This was not in our imagination, and it was impossible for us, for both of us, to do this in our imagination at the same time. And so being under its lights, these lights almost seemed to cover the entire ranch area. It was almost like we were under the sun itself, because everything else was dark surrounding those lights. And then very mysteriously, in just a matter of seconds, that was it. The vehicle was no longer there. it had disappeared. It was almost as if it just suddenly disappeared 100% as is. It left us bewildered, alarmed, ugly, feeling about what just happened. And then that's when the electricity returned. It was almost as if the electricity had never turned off, as if it never disappeared to begin with. And so when we realized what occurred when the electricity was working and so on, we were moving fast. We were getting out of there. It was very surprising, everything that occurred. Also, there was no longer any earthquake, nothing moving the area. The cows, even though they were still a little alarmed, they were no longer scared as they were before. It was extremely strange, beyond anything that I could describe. And then that was it. There was a disaster. It was almost as if there was a disaster. We were emotionally stunned, almost as if there was being trying to find logical explanations about what had happened without being too realistic. It was useless to deny what had occurred. And I think the behavior of everyone after seeing all this worried us the most because of the structure about this U itself. I think it is safe to say we no longer wanted to go hunting in that area because we were all blanking puzzled about what just occurred, and so we immediately got ready to go back to the city. And of course we will tell others about what happened to us. They may not believe us, they may not at the beginning stated they wouldn't believe us, but we were still very, very serious, and there were many other witnesses that we would try to let them know about what occurred, and then see what they could believe and what part of it would be true and not true. And so first we told those that we rented the ranch from about what happened to us. And I think that person told us that they had never seen anything like that, although they have stated they have seen other strange things that happened there. And so we told them we had no explanation as to what occurred with this U structure and so on. It just gave me the chills just rethinking about it. It was really, really an amazing experience like no other. And now that I think about it, maybe it was either UFO or something like that, but unlike any of the other UFOs I had heard of before. And so with no wasted time, we decided to get out of there since that structure had not gotten us. But this thing obviously made me believe now in paranormal things, the kind of stuff that has no logical explanation. And we may never know exactly what we saw, at least that morning. And so I think about the other times we went hunting in other places, and we never ever experienced something like this. And even though a long time has passed, and a lot of other things have occurred, we will never forget what we experienced that morning. It is something that has been permanently engraved in my memory, something that we still talk about very seriously to this day, and when given the opportunity to speak about strange things in general. It fills me with a kind of nostalgic mindset to think about it, and I still have so many unanswered questions. And then that's it. That's everything that this user has to state with regards to their U structure. Fascinating stuff, long story. So let's go ahead and let's talk about that here. It looks like this happened in a nondescript area, something involving a ranch that was surrounded by hundreds and hundreds of this semi-desert landscape. Again, prime area when it comes to anything involving an encounter with a UFO. Here in this case, it was not just one person, but it was their dad. So there was a witness to two people in total that this experience happened to. Third witness, if you could consider the cows. Interesting too that the animals were the first ones to realize that something was up. You hear about that, right? In other stories, you hear about dogs and birds and other types of animals that when something is about to happen in a location that is strange and unusual, they are the first ones to react. They're almost like an alarm as to when that's going to happen. Such was the case here with these cows. They were mooing, and as the user mentioned, they were almost like in a desperate mode, uncomfortable mode, very fearful about what was about to happen. And then sure enough, that's when that earthquake, whatever that was, it definitely felt like an earthquake to them, but as he stated, It wasn't like the ground was shaking, but still things were moving. That's when this stuff started to happen right then and there. And not only that, but it happened once, but how about that, twice? And both times again, that's when the cows were given the special alert. So one time it happened for them right there at the beginning, and then the other time, a couple days later, just when they were about to leave. And then boom, just like that, that's when that huge, absolutely huge U structure, which by the way, you're looking at a picture of here, that showcases the drawing that this guy made. Impressive, isn't it? It definitely looks like it's something mammoth, something like this, something U-shaped, obviously coming from out of nowhere, all of a sudden to appear right there. As he stated, it was like coming straight towards their location, and they couldn't escape it even if they wanted to. There it was, almost filling the entire sky, especially with the lights that the user described as if it was coming from the sun itself. Everything else just surrounded in total darkness. There it was suddenly above them. And then easily the most eerie part is just like that, it was gone. Milliseconds later, it was gone. Where this thing went, who knows? How it went so fast, who knows? But obviously it left them in such a confused state, unsettled state, as he mentioned several times, that they wanted to just get the heck out of there. Fascinating stuff. Here in this case, there was nothing bad that happened to them, other than, getting the heebie-jeebies as to the whole encounter itself. But otherwise, they were not harmed. But they seeing this thing, what a very memorable thing. And it's too bad there were, like as you stated at the beginning, there were no options really for cameras. Not that it really would have much helped, even if his father had the cell phone ready with regards to a camera, because all the electricity being shut off. We've heard that before, right? In some of the other encounters of UFOs, how there's all of a sudden button switched or something that causes the electricity, everything electricity-wise, to be able to just go cold. And then when that happens, it's almost as if it's complete darkness. But yeah, that's pretty much it. If anybody has any more info, then please post those comments below. If anybody knows maybe where this location was, as far as this mysterious ranch and so on, I'd love to hear what your comments are there too. All right, everybody. Thanks again as always. Take care.